The Nightly Business Report.
Good evening. Tonight, government says with the launch of the Uma Oya project, the Ceylon Electricity Board will now save over 9 billion rupees annually, which was spent to buy fuel to power up the grid in the absence of the project. Digital strategy by the government has managed to get praise from the industry. However, implementation is a point of concern for many. For the second time this week, trading at the stock exchange ends positively. And the latest iPad and iPad Air to hit the global market next month.
From Studio 24, here's Uma Oya.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The government is hoping that the Uma Oya project will kick into the national grid and help compensate the Ceylon Electricity Board for its over 9 billion rupees annual loss. Electricity is a massively contentious issue in Sri Lanka, and since 2022, the government has not been able to add additional power to the grid. The Uma Oya project, which will add 120 megawatts of power, is seen as a welcome measure to a power-saving nation.
Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe and Iranian President Dr. Ebrahim Raisi jointly inaugurated the Uma Oya multipurpose development project today. Shortly after his arrival, President Raisi participated in the public ceremony marking the inauguration of the UOMDP, which aims to alleviate water scarcity in the southeastern dry region of the country by redirecting an annual average of 145 million cubic meters of excess water from the Uma Oya basin to the Kirindi Oya basin. The government said in an earlier statement that owing to this project, approximately 4,500 hectares of new land and 1,500 hectares of existing agricultural land in the Monoragala district will receive irrigation water. Moreover, Batulla, Monoragala and Hambantota will benefit from 39 million cubic meters of water for drinking and industrial purposes while generating and adding 290 gigawatts of electrical energy annually to the national grid.
The central bank has issued directions limiting loans to a single borrower or a group of connected customers to 25% of Tier 1 capital, with state enterprises, which turned out to be the biggest borrowers, also included.
In a 2007 direction, banks were allowed to give loans up to 30% of the capital for a single customer and 33% for a group. But the rules were widely violated in the case of state enterprises, which were used as off-budget vehicles to give energy and other subsidies. Banks will have to limit exposures to 25% starting from January 2026. According to transitional provisions published in the direction, seems to indicate that some banks may have single borrower exposures of 85% or more. They will be required to bring exposures down to 60% by 2027 and 25% by 2028.
Official data shows that Sri Lanka's external financial account turned negative in 2023 as bilateral lenders stopped financing the government. Multilaterals had to be paid and banks repaid credit lines that counterparties refused to roll over. The financial account was $1.3 billion in deficit in 2023, subject to errors and omissions of $318 million. Sri Lanka defaulted on official credit in April 2022. However, the country had to repay multilateral lenders, banks and counterparties. The balance of payments turned positive only in the third quarter of 2022 and monetary stability was restored. A positive overall balance of payments also denotes outflows through the central bank. According to the balance of payments data released by the central bank, other banks or deposit-taking corporations repaid $1.8 billion to counterparties in 2023 as they were unable to roll over credit lines, though official payments halted. The head of China's central bank wants creditors like Sri Lanka, who's engaged in debt restructurings, to agree on how to fairly share the burden of relief. China's role as a major creditor to developing nations has come under renewed scrutiny as billions of US dollars in loans over the past decade have soared.
Pan Gongshang, Governor of the People's Bank of China shared his views during a closed-door meeting last week in Washington on the sidelines of the International Monetary Fund spring meetings. A series of sovereign defaults set off by the pandemic, including Zambia, Ghana and Sri Lanka, have taken longer than expected to resolve amid disagreements among creditors on how to restructure debts. A key sticking point for talks between bilateral creditors such as China and bondholders has been how to measure the comparability of treatment of the relief that they provide debtors, with Beijing leading a push among official creditors for bondholders to take deeper losses on their distressed debt. Pan said China thinks the issue is important and wants creditors to agree on an approach to meeting the comparability principle in debt negotiations. Officials at the IMF, who are supporting various debt restructuring talks, have expressed a similar sentiment.
The Department of Immigration and Emigration launched the newest version of the e-visa website, which can be reached at srilankaevisa.lk. This robust and state-of-the-art platform efficiently manages non-resident applications for a diverse range of visa categories, including short-term, long-term, transit and gratis visas, across 15 visa categories with stay durations of 1 month to 10 years under this unified and integrated e-visa platform.
The new e-visa scheme came into effect on the 17th of April 2024. This update aligns with the government's commitment to modernizing the visa process and positioning Sri Lanka as a global travel destination. Previously, under the ETA regime, tourists from SAARC countries were limited to a 30-day tourist visa. The updated scheme offers a more extended 60-day visa under the 6-month category for SAARC countries and non-SAARC countries. The platform's expanded offerings across visa categories allow for greater flexibility and longer multiple visits, which were not possible under the previous ETA system. The visa-free arrangement for 7 countries, China, India, Indonesia, Russia, Thailand, Malaysia and Japan, will remain in effect until the 30th of April 2024. Moreover, visitors from Singapore, Maldives, Czech Republic and Seychelles enjoy visa exemptions.
We'll take a short break and be right back with the day's trading details from the Colombo Stock Exchange. This is the Nightly Business Report. Welcome back and let me take you directly to the stock exchange. The positive momentum at the Colombo Stock Exchange continues with both indices ending in the green territory. Both indices managed to gain about a percentage point at the end of the day's trading. Let's get a breakdown of the events at the Colombo Stock Exchange, and for that, standing by is Kanushka Jayatissa from SC Securities.
Yes. In today's market, the all-share price index closed at 11,905 points, marking a 77-point increase, while the S&P SL20 ended at 3,492 points, showing an increase of 11.1 points from the previous session. Total trading volume reached 207 million shares with a turnover of 2.5 billion rupees. The top 5 gainers for the day were Blue Diamonds Jewelry Worldwide, Pegasus Hotels of Ceylon, Dolphin Hotels, Central Industries and Serendip Hotels non-voting. The top 5 losers for the day were Industrial Asphalts, UB Finance, Softlogic Holdings, Mahaveli Coconut Plantations and Pan Asian Power. Moving on to the sector-wise performance, commercial services continued its momentum while diversified conglomerates showed a renewed interest among the investors. The only crossing recorded for the day included Colombo Fort Land and Building PLC with 1 million shares trading at 30 million rupees.
Last year, the average weighted prime lending rate reached its peak. However, due to central bank's policy rate reductions, the AWPLR has been gradually declining this year. Here's Dimantha Matthews from First Capital Holdings, who gives us an idea of AWPR's behavior and the future outlook.
So the weighted average prime lending rate has significantly declined during this year. So last week it recorded at 10.41%, a major decline if you take 1 year ago, where it was above the 20% mark. So if you take from the peak that we saw in the November-December period of 2022, where it neared the 30% mark, we've seen a massive decline over that last 1 year and 1.5 years period of time. So with the decline, what we've seen is over the last 3 to 4 months, the decline was far severe simply because of the lack of demand in the system. Now, if you take October to December period in 2023, we saw a rise in lending activity among the banks and with consumer demand rising. However, that came to a halt with the increase in taxes and with it the subsequent decline, major decline in private sector credit and consumer demand. And with it we saw almost negligible levels of credit growth happening during the first quarter. And then right now also we are seeing significantly lower levels of lending. So with it, with the lack of demand, there has been a significant decline in the weighted average prime lending rate. So going forward, what we expect is the prime lending rate to touch a bottom of 10% is our target, and then with the consumer demand rising towards the second half of the year, where we feel that there will be a rise in credit and consumer demand, there's likely to be a slight rise in the AWPLR as well. We think there is likely to be a 100 to 200 basis point rise in the consumer or the weighted average prime lending rate. So with that, we believe that it will come into a range of 11 to 13%, mostly concentrated on the lower levels of that range. And with it, we feel that there is likely to be some amount of private sector credit also picking up. So we think 7.5% is the targeted private sector credit growth for this year, and bulk of that growth coming in the second half of the year.
Gold prices remained in a tight range in Asian trade today as a weaker dollar limited further losses in the yellow metal. However, anticipation of more cues on interest rates kept traders wary of the yellow metal. Bullion prices were nursing a sharp drop from recent record highs as easing tensions over a war between Iran and Israel sapped away at the safe haven demand for the yellow metal. Spot gold rose by 0.3% to $2,330.05 an ounce, while gold futures expiring in June steadied at $2,343.15 an ounce. Spot prices were now trading about $100 away from a record high hit earlier in April. Oil prices extended gains today after industry data showed a surprise drop in U.S. crude stocks last week, a positive sign for demand, though markets were also keeping a close eye on hostilities in the Middle East. Brent crude futures rose 26 cents or 0.29% to $88.68 a barrel, and U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures climbed 26 cents or 0.31% to $83.62 a barrel. U.S. crude inventories fell 3.237 million barrels in the week ended April 19, according to market sources citing American Petroleum Institute figures. In contrast, 6 analysts polled by Reuters had expected a rise of 800,000 barrels. The Sri Lankan rupee has appreciated against the US dollar at commercial banks in Sri Lanka today compared to Monday. According to Ceylon Bank, the buying and selling rates of the US dollar are unchanged at 295 rupees and 25 cents and 305 rupees and 75 cents respectively. Meanwhile, the central bank puts the rupee buying rate as 301 rupees and 46 cents. Now here's a look at how the rupee fared against the other currencies during the day today. Another break now, and when we return, we'll tell you what's happening with the corporate world. This is the Nightly Business Report. Welcome back. As a significant step towards enhancing cross-financial and insurance services, SDB Bank is pleased to announce its new bank assurance partnership with LOLC Life Assurance Limited.
This collaboration marks an important milestone in providing SDB Bank customers with convenient access to life insurance products, leveraging LOLC's expertise and integrating its offerings into SDB Bank's extensive branch network. Through this partnership, customers can avail both banking and insurance services under one roof, thereby facilitating a seamless service experience for current and prospective clients. This initiative is expected to leverage the strengths of both entities, combining SDB Bank's robust banking network with LOLC Life Assurance expertise in providing comprehensive insurance solutions.
Yesterday, the government launched its National Digital Economic Strategy, which aims to modernize the country's functionalities through the use of strategic technology. Soon afterwards, the industry responded to the proposals, and there were mixed feelings about the initiative. Sri Lanka Association of Software and Service Companies, or SLASCOM, applauded the government's initiative, while the head of WSO2, Sanjeeva Veeravarana, speaking to the Nightly Business Report, said that now its implementation and way forward is a priority.
So it's good to see the government publishing this digital economy framework. That's good. But the reality is we've had every government publish a digital economy framework for the last many times. And we seem to be really good at coming up with beautiful strategy documents and very bad at executing any of it. Yeah, ICTA started their work in 2003, if I remember right. And it was called the East Sri Lanka program. And here we are 20 plus years later, we still haven't delivered half of what was envisioned at that time. And half is being generous. So I think the problem is not about getting yet another strategy document going, but I think we need to come up with a pragmatic way of getting these things done so that it's beneficial for the society at large, for people of Sri Lanka at large, and of course, as a result of that, so for the industry. But I think the foundational elements of those are what we need to focus on, not this grandiose stuff that we end up with all kinds of beautiful documents and beautiful presentations and lots of wonderful press conferences and talks. And time goes by and we are back to, 3% of the people doing online registration of vehicles.
The Commercial Bank of Ceylon has been named the best bank in Sri Lanka for a remarkable 22nd year in the world's Best Banks 2024 list released recently by the US-based Global Finance magazine. Global Finance said its Best Bank Awards recognize financial institutions that offer the broadest range of services, long-term reliability, and technological innovation. The 2024 edition of the Global Finance list of 28 best banks in the Asia-Pacific region named Commercial Bank alongside leading banks of the caliber. These winning banks are to be honored at an award ceremony to be held during the IMF World Bank annual meeting in Washington, D.C. on October 26 this year. President's media division announced that Sri Lanka has granted approval for the privately owned Iranian airline Mahan Air flights between the two nations, anticipating increased tourism from Iran to Sri Lanka and bolstered cooperation in aviation. In 2022, Iran ranked 27th among countries with the highest international tourist arrivals in Sri Lanka, experiencing notable growth compared to 2021. Mahan Airlines, operating under the name of Mahan Air, is a privately owned Iranian airline based in Tehran, Iran. It operates scheduled domestic services and international flights to the Far East, Middle East, Central Asia, and Europe. Another break now, and when we return, we'll tell you what's happening with the corporate world. This is the Nightly Business Report. Welcome back. Most broader Asian markets advanced today, albeit a slower pace. China's Shenzhen SCI 300 and Shanghai Composite traded marginally higher, lagging their peers amid resurgent doubts over the country's economic recovery. Australia's ASX 200 added 0.3%, having trimmed a bulk of its initial gains after data showed consumer inflation grew more than expected in the first quarter. Japan's broader Topix index added 1%, with export-oriented stocks benefiting from weaknesses in the yen ahead of a Bank of Japan meeting this Friday. Futures for India's NSEI index ended positively, with the index remaining in sight of record highs hit earlier in April. Meanwhile, in the US, the Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 263.71 points, or 0.69%, to close at 38,503.69. The S&P 500 gained 1.2% to finish the session at 5,070.55, while the Nasdaq Composite tickled up by 1.59% to end at 15,696.64.
U.S. stocks closed higher on Tuesday following upbeat earnings from corporate giants like General Motors. The Dow added nearly 0.7%, the S&P 500 gained 1.2%, and the Nasdaq rose roughly 1.6%. Shares of General Motors popped more than 4% after the automaker topped Wall Street's targets and raised its annual forecast, citing stable pricing and solid demand for its gas-powered cars. Meanwhile, shares of electric vehicle maker Tesla, which closed up more than 1.5%, gained another 6% in after-hours trading as investors cheered the news it would move up the launch of new models. This overshadowed a significant revenue drop for the quarter. Big tech peers Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta Platforms report results later this week. Shares of Spotify rose nearly 11.5% after the Swedish music streaming giant posted gross profit that topped €1 billion, or $1.1 billion, for the first time. On the downside, shares of JetBlue plunged nearly 19% as the low-cost carrier trimmed its annual revenue forecast following lukewarm first-quarter revenue.
Tesla has announced its profits fell sharply in the first 3 months of the year to $1.13 billion compared with $2.51 billion in 2023. It caps a difficult period for the electric vehicle maker, which, faced with failing sales, has announced thousands of job cuts.
Tesla appears to have axed plans for a cheaper model that was set to cost around $25,000. On Tuesday, the EV maker said it would introduce cheaper new models early in 2025, but details on the products were in short supply. Musk wouldn't say whether they would be all new or updates of existing vehicles. Tesla said the models would use aspects of current platforms. It warned that cost reductions might not be as great as under previous plans, suggesting any new cars won't hit the $25,000 starting price that Musk has long promised. Even so, the news sent Tesla shares sharply higher in after-hours trade, gaining as much as 12.5%. The stock had seen months of declines amid signs of rising competition and falling sales.
Are you hoping to get an iPad or an iPad Air perhaps? Well, hang in there for just about a week because Apple Air says that they will be launching the new line on the 7th of May.
The iPad may finally be getting a major revamp. Apple said Tuesday that it would host an event on May 7th, and reports suggest that will be the moment for new models of its tablet computers. The current iPad designs have been on sale since 2018, albeit with periodic updates. Any launch would also come amid declining sales for the product. iPad shipments dropped by 25% over the first quarter, with the broader market for such gadgets under duress as consumers cut back on non-essential spending. Apple sells 5 models of the tablet, but they contributed less than 6% of its turnover in the year-end quarter. Now the tech giant is in need of a boost amid signs that sales are also slowing for its flagship iPhone. Figures this week showed sales of the handset slumped 19% over the first quarter in China, the world's biggest market for phones. It's suffering as local rivals including Huawei step up competition. Worldwide, Apple has lost its title as top phone maker to Samsung. That's according to estimates by industry experts IDC. The firm is yet to disclose any details of what new products the May event might see.
Make sure you get in touch with us via business@derana.lk. And that'll do from all of us at the Nightly Business Report. As always, we appreciate your company. I'm Uma Oya Inauguration. Good night.